Home to hospital. What was that like? Describe a little bit about Ross, who he was prior, and tell us what happened, and then en route to hospital and in the ER. And
Sure.
Yeah.
So on November 11th, I was working in the garage, and my dad had been killed in an automobile accident on January 18th, 2001, and I was having a hard time recovering from that. A dear friend of mine who runs a craft show said, "I've got your booth and you're going to be in it." So I had to go down into the garage and sort through all of my things and get everything set up and ready to go. And my husband didn't want me to be cold, so he turned on the propane heater. And just a little background, for me, both of my grandfathers were firefighters, and I did not like the propane heater. And I asked Robert to please shut it off. And I just said, "Go outside while I make lunch." I was making lunch, and Robert was down in the garage, but our neighbor had called him away, and he went to go speak to our neighbor. It was a typical busy Sunday. The phone rang, a friend called to talk about Thanksgiving dinner, and the kids went outside. I was making lunch, and then I heard the scream. And I said to Kathy, "I have to go. Something terrible's happened." I hung up the phone, and just as I hung up, Ross came running into the house covered with flames. And it was as if my grandfathers were there directing me. Wow. "Don't roll them on the carpet. It's synthetic. It'll melt. You can't roll them in the gravel. It's new construction. The gravel will get in the burns." Ripped the clothes off his body. But it wasn't a stream. It was just a total knowledge. And so I did that. I ripped the clothes off his body. And then he ran, just like a burn victim does. He ran, and we captured him. We wrapped him in a sheet and hosed him down and kept the water on him to stop the burn from continuing. And I don't even know how I knew how to do that. Wow. But I was actually told later that saved his life. So we called the ambulance, and because we live out of the city limits, it took the paramedics about 20 minutes to get to the house. And we were just panic stricken. I've got a 5-year-old that's been severely burned, and I don't know what's going to happen. I was trying to get him to drink water, and he was screaming and pouring the water on his back. When the ambulance came, they got to our house, and not knowing the area very well, they almost went the wrong way to go to town. He was screaming that he was going to die, and he was asking Jesus to please not let him die.
And he was 5?
And he was 5.
Oh.
Ross was a busy, on-the-go, adorable baby boy.
Yes.
Yeah. Just always into something, though. He just always we called him Magoo because he was like Mr. Magoo. He would always just end up in like these ridiculous little circumstances. So in the ambulance, I actually had to fight the paramedics. Help the paramedics because Ross was fighting to get a line started. We got him to the hospital, and the surgeon and the ER physician, Dr. Petty, was there, and he just said, "We've got a helicopter here already." And when I came out from where the ambulance brought us in, and they said, "You have a crowd of people in the waiting room." My friend Kathy told everybody that something bad had happened, and they all went straight to the hospital.
Wow.
So anyway, and they put him in the helicopter. It's the little things that happen in your life that you don't anticipate. Thinking, why didn't I insist he shut off that propane heater? How did he even catch on fire? All of those things that are going through your mind. And so they took him up to burn ICU,
Mm-hmm.
and they debrided him, and I sat outside the room. I didn't leave his side for 18 days.
Mm.
I was that parent. He had his first surgery, and up until that point, we didn't know what was going to happen, if he would survive or not.
Wow. So tell me a little bit about when he was there, like as far as fluid replacement and just what the day-to-day with the nurses. What was that experience like in those early days?
Right. The burn ICU nurses were phenomenal. They were phenomenal. We had some of the best burn doctors in the world, and Ross was one of the first patients to receive Integra,
Wow.
which is the cow collagen and shark cartilage that was developed at UW.
Okay.
So he was one of the first patients to get that.
And at what time did he start getting that? Like at what stage of his healing did he start? Do you remember? Roughly?
I think he had that surgery after they were able to get him pretty stable. So the fluid loss was enormous.
Yeah.
And they had full fluid IVs going for him.
Yes. Yeah.
Just mainly trying to keep him comfortable, keep him sedated.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They never said to me until after his surgery whether he would live or die. So that whole time I was in suspended animation, not knowing if my child was going to live.
Oh, wow. And at what point did he have surgery? Do you remember how many, from the point of admission to when he had surgery?
So they debrided him immediately that day.
Yeah.
And then they did the first phase of surgery with the Integra about 4 days.
Wow.
4 days into it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then he was sent down to the burn unit.
Yeah. Where were his burns? Where did he get hit?
So Ross was burned at the beginning. It was a T-shirt that he had that caught on fire.
Okay.
And what we have figured out, it was the inks used in the transfer that were the accelerants.
Oh, okay.
So his shoulders, all the way up to his shoulders,
Right.
down along the side, his chest, under his arms, wrapping around his front, his back, all the way down to his buttocks, on both sides.
Oh. Were there, during that time, were the physicians talking to you about complications, just in regards to the burns?
They were very, very forthcoming.
Mm-hmm.
We had impetigo, which was a possibility, and he did in fact get impetigo.
Wow.
So that, of course, we're worried about infections,
Mm-hmm.
pneumonia. We thought that he had pneumonia at one point, and they brought in the X-ray machine to the room,
Okay.
did the X-ray, but because Ross was so young, they wanted to put him under to do the takedown, so they did the Integra.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then to do the takedown to see how it took, they put him under.
Right. They would do for
Right.
sure. Yeah.
And so then for the grafts, but we had to wait on the grafts because he got the impetigo.
Oh, wow. And at what point did he get that? When did he get the
He got
impetigo
that
grafts?
about we were in the hospital a total of 6 weeks.
Okay.
So he got the impetigo about 3 weeks in.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so would you say then the first few days was he was under, he was on a ventilator? Was he ever on a ventilator?
Just the first day.
The first day.
The first
Okay.
day. He was on the ventilator the first day.
Okay. Yeah. What's your experience from a team approach at Harborview? Did you witness the team approach there? Were you involved in any of the interdisciplinary conversations as part of the team? What was your experience?
My assessment of Harborview is that they are so focused on traumas that they don't relate to the fact that it's got a ripple effect. You've got that trauma, And I think Harborview is outstanding at, you know, putting people together and then putting them out the door.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they were really clear about, you know, steps that needed to be taken in order to assure that he was going to have range of motion,
Mm-hmm.
and what obstacles we were facing with that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. With the constriction of the burns
Right.
and needing proactive physical therapy to
Extremely.
kind of get those mechanisms going and blood flow and all of that,
Yeah.
because that would have been completely constricted.
Yeah.
What gave you strength? What gave your family? What gave Ross strength, do you think, during the hospital stay?
I think what gave Ross strength, well, I have a picture of Ross, and he does look like a very sad little boy.
Mm.
All of the people, though, that come to Harborview, that give their own time, that come with the dogs, the therapy dogs, that come, and it was in December, so there were lots of people there because it was Christmas.
Yeah.
You know, that, and then people coming down to see him, and his roommate, you know, the fact that he had another, you know, little boy there with him. Ironically, I was officer training for the Army, and when I thought that I couldn't do something, I just heard my drill sergeant yelling at me and telling me to do it. And,
Right.
and that was the only way I got through it.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was in the tank room, and I had to learn how to do his wound care, which is very difficult because you've got a frightened 5-year-old boy, you've got stitches, you've got bandages, things you don't know, infection, and he's fighting every step of the way. I mean, literally fighting, hitting, scared, and I just remember saying, is you're in the tank room, they have the big tub, you have curtains around you, and there's other people in the tank room, and I just said, if you move, you are wrong, just like the drill sergeant was saying. And then I heard this little lady go, is that his mother?
Regarding the tank, what was that like? The tank room, when you mentioned the tank room, what was that?
I was ominous.
Like, what? Describe it. What is a tank
So
room?
the tank room is it's a room with different metal tubs, and they're on a lift, so they rise up and they go down. And it's a stainless steel bathtub
Wow.
that they coat in plastic to try to keep infection down.
Oh, wow.
And so you have multiple burn survivors in the tank room at different times being
Yeah.
tended to. But I had to know how to do this,
Yeah.
you know, and there, he wasn't discharged from the burn unit until he was 12. So he was still a burn patient
Wow.
for 7 years.
Wow.
We had to go down to the burn unit. And so he's had multiple surgeries. Some of the grafts didn't take, and then he had contractures, so they had to go in and do additional grafts. And so, you know, for the whole process. And then, you know, Ross is so tall, he's
Yeah.
6'3", that they were worried that the grafts might not keep up.
Oh.
I did a lot of the PT, you know, he could go to PT 3 times a week, but we had to do it every day. You know, and I was the one sitting on him and holding his hands over his head so he could have full range of motion as he was kicking me in the back. That nurse, Kevin,
Wow.
he came every weekend and he was there. I think he worked like 2 12s or something. And I would just go like, you know, and, you know,
Kevin's here. It's gonna be. I can like breathe. I can
walk
exhale.
around,
I
yeah.
can do a huge exhale and just like.
well, like Ross was so constipated, you know, they give him Senecot and everything. And finally, Kevin looked at me one Sunday and he had a newspaper and he just looked at me and goes, we're going to be a while. I think you should go shopping. And he sat in the bathroom with Ross. Kevin read the newspaper and finally Ross pooped her. And she came up and she talked to the school, you know, because Ross did get bullied and he did get beat up.
Oh.
Yeah. You know, I had 2nd-degree burns all over my hands. And it was a few years later, and I was at Costco, and I saw one of the ER nurses there, and I wanted to thank her for helping. She was very calm during the entire event. And I went up and I said, I just want to thank you for, that time. And she said, I wanted to tell you that the supervising nurse would not let me treat your hands because she thought that you had lit your child on fire. So I just want to say to any nurse, that's a horrible thing to think. I had burns all over my hands because I ripped the burning clothes off my baby. And they wouldn't treat me until I got to Harborview. I walked around with second-degree burns all over my hands until finally, at about 8 o'clock at night, I said to the burn unit nurse, I said, my hands really hurt. And he was just shocked that they had let me leave. It's a trauma. It's still a trauma. There's a lot of help for burn survivors, but there's not a lot of help for moms of burn survivors. And I would like that to change. Because you never get the sight or the smell out of your head.
Yeah.
And he's 21. He's successful. He's won state for wrestling. He's incredible. He's the first burn survivor to ever get a full Navy ROTC scholarship. But he's still my little boy. And it took, as a mom, I felt like I should have delivered a perfect package to adulthood. And I didn't. He's perfect for who he is. Safety is the key, and safety is not just about having a lock on a door. Your emotional safety. I think most of our scars are probably emotional scars. And so it's important to keep the psyche. The psyche is so important. Dr. Fouché was the resident there, and now he's in Wisconsin. So one of the nicest things I got to do between Ross's junior and senior year of high school is I tracked down Dr. Fouché because it was after Ross survived his first surgery and they put on the Integra. And we finally knew he was going to live. He said, this is going well. We know he's going to live. So we looked at him and we said, well, will he be able to wrestle? Because, we're a total wrestling family.
Yeah, totally.
And so he looked at me and he said, I guarantee you he'll be able to wrestle. And when Ross got accepted to wrestle at Nationals, I tracked down Dr. Fouché and I told him, thanks to your work, those years ago, now he's going to wrestle at Nationals.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I think that meant a lot to him.
Yes.
I'm sure he was stunned. I don't think anybody ever said, but will he be able to wrestle?
That's so, wow. Thank you, Barbara.
You're welcome,
for being an inspiration. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks.